On the podcast this week, analysis of the BSAC 2022 incident report that showed the fewest diver deaths in 45 years. So congratulations, everyone. But there's some other interesting things to learn from it. Divers discover the largest underwater drug stash ever in the UK. And some interesting business manoeuvring from Blue O2. But first, let's look at that BSAC report. So if you didn't know that, BSAC run an annual diving incident report every single year. That's what annual means. And last year, 2022, showed a total of 248 incidents involving UK divers. All but 66 occurring in UK waters were reported to the British Sabbatical Club last year, and all are recorded in the BSAC Incident Report 2022, which has just been released. The 6 fatalities that occurred represented the lowest number recorded in a normal diving year since 1977, and equaled the total for 2020, which is, of course, the first year of the coronavirus pandemic, during which diving activity had been severely limited, especially here in the UK. We were recommended not to go scuba diving to not overburden the emergency services. So the fact that we're equaling that total is a good thing. In 2022, diving activity had returned to pre-pandemic levels, but it was too early to say whether the reduction in diver deaths from 16 in 2021 represented a trend, says BSAC. The UK national governing body reports each year on incidents involving UK scuba divers affiliated to any training agency, with the aim of promoting diver safety and improving understanding of trends. Overall incident numbers reported since 2014 have remained remarkably static, apart from the year of the pandemic, says BSAC. But what was noticeable in 2022 was the absence of the early season spike often seen in previous years. This suggests that divers are exercising appropriate preparation for a return to the diving activity, says the club. The average age of fatalities was 55.5 years old. In 5 of the 6 cases, the diver was unconscious in the water, and in 4, there was enough information to indicate that medical causes were a noteworthy factor. Among all incidents, immersive pulmonary edema or drowning from the inside continued to be an identifiable concern, according to the number of both confirmed and suspected cases. Where IPO is proven to have occurred following an incident, the report is updated, so IPO incidents can sometimes be included from previous years. 9 incidents were recorded in 2022 in which one or more IPO identifying factors, such as breathing difficulties that might continue at the surface, confusion, mistaken out of gas signals, or refusal of alternate gas sources, were noted. Other types of incidents can also prove difficult to categorize. Illness and injury was the most reported, says BSAC, though this could sometimes include decompression illness. Fewer ascent-related and DCI events were reported, although this was offset by an increase in equipment, injury, and miscellaneous incidences. So, a number of events involved regulator free flows that did not develop into more serious incidents, only thanks to alternative gas sources and vigilant buddies. There has been a slight indication of a rise in incidents involving inflation valves, with the club highly recommending that more attention be paid to their servicing. So on your dry suits and on your BCDs, get them checked out. There were also fewer incidents involving delayed surface marker buoys, although entanglement with DSMB lines still featured in some incidents. Information on depth at which incidents occur can be helpful, but 2022 saw a significant rise in the number of reports from which it was impossible to glean from this information, says BSAC. In some cases, this was because emergency services reports did not cover that aspect. As in previous years, DCI symptoms were more likely to become apparent only at the surface, but overall, there continued to be a significant decrease in the proportion of incidents reported as starting at the surface, and more in which the starting depth was unknown. In 2022, the Coast Guard was alerted 80 times to help rescue divers, 63 of the call-outs occurring between June and September, so that's the peak diving season. The RNLI was called out 27 times, of which 16 were in the same summer months. Helicopter-assisted divers on 13 occasions, 8 of these in the summer. The full report, compiled by BSAC Incident Advisor Jim Watson and data analyst Ben Peddy, can be downloaded from the club's website. Divers from any agency are asked to report incidents to BSAC so that they can compile a full incident list. It doesn't have to be here in the UK, it can be abroad, and yet the more data they have, the more trends they can see. So good news and bad news, and just things to pay attention to. It's always a little bit of sort of morbid reading, but it is quite important reading, and it kind of highlights certain areas that you may not have thought about. And yeah, the one about the inflators being a contributor to a lot of incidents recently. Yeah, it might just spark people to go, oh, you know what? Maybe I should just clean out my my BCD or my dry suit valve. Just give it a quick once over, take it in the shop to get it serviced, and it may prevent a future incident. Police divers have found and retrieved a 137 kilogram consignment of cocaine with an estimated street value of more than 10 million British pounds hidden deep inside a ship's hull at the Sheerness port in Kent. So the discovery is only the second instance of a major underwater concealment of Class A drugs being seized off the UK coast, but with 3 times as much cocaine found as on the first occasion, which was in Bristol in November 2021. So a Panamanian registered container ship carrying a cargo of bananas had docked in Sheerness while on its way from Panama to the Netherlands. And on the 14th of October, the divers were sent to investigate its hull based on intelligence supplied by the National Crime Agency. The search was carried out in restricted visibility, because it's British diving, over 5 hours by a specialist National Police Chiefs Council dive team, supported by officers from the Border Force National Deep Rummage Team, which I just think is an awesome name of the Deep Rummage Team, and port operator Peel Ports. They eventually found 4 large holdalls concealed below the waterline inside the sea chest, which is an intake area. It's either round or squarish, like built into the hull. So you have this hole that lets seawater in. It's usually covered up by a grate, and marine life loves it. They were actually inside of which the sea chest, and the divers had to extract the bags from behind bolted grills. So it was very obviously purposely. It's not something the ship that happened to suck up. They were put in there and they were sealed and bolted inside. The NCA operations manager David Phillips says this was an extremely rare and sophisticated concealment and shows how far criminal networks would go to get dangerous drugs like cocaine into circulation. The sale of such Class A drugs is controlled by gangs who inflict violence and exploitation in our communities. Thanking the divers for their work carried out in challenging conditions, Phillips said that the collaborative effort demonstrated our collective determination to tackle organised crime groups head-on and stem the supply of harmful drugs like cocaine. NCA investigators are now collaborating on the case with Dutch and Panamanian law enforcement agencies to try and catch whoever put them there. But yeah, huge find, 137 kilos of drugs, and they're all in the North Face, like big blue duffel bags. And as an update to an earlier news story, was it earlier this year? It may have been before that, but in Australia, meanwhile, a father and son have appeared in court in connection with another underwater cocaine smuggling operation, but one that went tragically wrong. The plot emerged after Brazilian rebreather diver Bruno Borges Martin was found dead beside packages of the drug in Newcastle, New South Wales, in May last year. A total of 104 kilograms of cocaine was found, half of it with the diver and the rest in a nearby docked ship's hull, though it was thought at the time that this formed only part of the consignment. Scuba diver and marine tour operator James Blee, who was 63, was later arrested by police and border force officers whilst trying to escape to Singapore and charged with importing and supplying the drugs. Police had then launched an unsuccessful search for a second diver who they believed was also been involved in the aborted operation to retrieve the narcotics consignment. Blee has now appeared in Newcastle local court on the 25th of October to plead guilty to charges of importing commercial quantities of cocaine and people smuggling. Court documents indicated that divers Borges Martin and De Silva have been smuggled into Australia near Darwin on the 27th of April. All of the offences were said to have been committed between the 16th and 9th, the 16th of April and the 9th of May 2022. Blee also pleaded guilty to knowingly dealing with 170,000 Australian dollars in proceeds of crime money, so that's just shy of £89,000. However, prosecutors dropped a manslaughter charge arising from an earlier accusation that he had provided Borges Martin with dive gear knowing it to be faulty. Blee's 21-year-old son, James, was also in court to plead not guilty to aiding and abetting his father to import cocaine and dealing with more than $100,000 in proceeds of crime money. A charge of supplying a prohibited drug was withdrawn. Father and son are due to reappear in court on the 23rd of November. This week also saw a interesting press release from Master Liverboards and Blue O2. So from Tuesday, October 31st, from Halloween just gone, Master Liverboards will be taking over both operations and sales of Blue Horizon and Blue Melody in the Egyptian Red Sea, as well as Blue Voyager in the Maldives. Blue O2 has been operating these award-winning vessels for many years, and on the ground, the same team will be waiting for customers, both old and new. However, both the management and the branding of the vessels will be shifting to Master Liverboards, who bring their wealth of worldwide vessel operations to the already excellent team. They will also continue to push things forwards, as they always have. Master Liverboards will also bring their world-class sales and reservations team into play as the main booking hub for all Master Liverboard vessels. This will mean even more choice for Master Liverboards clients, all in one place. Both the Red Sea and the Maldives offer not only world-class liverboard diving, but also a large variety of things to see on those dives. Looking at the press release, since we began our journey in 2003, Blue O2 has always strived to provide the best experiences for you, our customers. Over the years, we've been found forward-thinking and innovative with our fleet. We're very proud to have our Blue O2 family spread throughout the world. In 2015, we combined our knowledge and experience with that of the team from Worldwide Dive and Sail. Master Liverboards was born. As we continue to innovate and strive towards our main goal of providing inspirational experiences to all of our customers, it is our duty to challenge the status quo and ask ourselves, what can we do better? We are very pleased to announce the Master Liverboards team will be combining forces with our expert Blue O2 ground teams in the Red Sea and the Maldives. Master Liverboards will take responsibility for the ground operations to bring you, our customers, the best of both worlds. What does this mean for you? If you have a current booking with us, this remains unchanged. The main purpose of this change is to enhance the experience you get in resort. Many of you will already be great friends with a number of our crew and guides. We will continue to build on our relationships with the core Blue O2 team and crew, providing the solid foundation from which to grow, coupled with the expertise of Master Liverboards in running a smooth, safe and trusted operation. The future is very exciting. Practical considerations. To facilitate these changes and ensure a smooth transition for all of our customers, the Blue O2 office will be closed from Friday the 27th of October and will reopen on Wednesday the 1st of November. So that's already happened. During this time, so interesting changes and almost like rebranding. Don't know. We'll see. But it seems like Mars deliverables are going to be looking after some of the Blue O2 fleet going forwards. So, as I mentioned at the start of the podcast, I'm going to talk briefly about Scuba Pro. Scuba Pro was founded in 1963 by Gustave Delaveille and Dick Bonin, and in 2023 they see their 60th anniversary, and Scuba Pro is stronger than ever. Today, Scuba Pro is a global brand, and you'll find them around any dive site or dive boat because scuba divers around the world just trust Scuba Pro as a brand. I personally have never had a problem recommending any Scuba Pro dive equipment to anyone asking. I used it whilst I was scuba diving and teaching, and so did all of my students as well. They were using Scuba Pro equipment, and no matter where you are in the world, it won't be hard to find a service center because they're located all over the world. The divers are Scuba Pro's inspiration. Every product, every enhancement, every decision, everything that they do is designed to make your diving experience the best that it can be. Because without this blue planet of divers eager to explore, their innovations mean nothing. And Scuba Pro want to thank you for being part of their journey and for being their inspiration for the future. They are so excited to share their latest innovations with you. The best is yet to come. A few big things this year have been the Ulex range of wetsuits that use a plant-based foam instead of neoprene, which is better for the planet, and the S-Tech fins, which are a more technical focused fin, a bit of a hybrid between the Seawing Nova and the Jet fin. One really cool feature is that you can actually adjust their buoyancy by adding or removing little metal plates in the fin before the dive. But for more information, head over to scubapro.com. As far as new dive equipment, not a huge amount that I've seen. I know I see this every week, but I did see something on Santi's Instagram. They've been doing a photo shoot of a female model wearing a new undersuit. This looks like a female version of their Kango, I think it's called. They released the men's version of the Kango, I don't know, Kango undersuit a few weeks back, maybe a month or two ago, and they did say that there was a women's version coming. I don't know why they didn't release them at the same time, but hey, maybe they just had the men's like ready and rearing to go. They had to do some, I don't know, something for the women's version. So yeah, I imagine next week. Maybe the week after, because we're coming into to DEMA in a week or two. Maybe they're going to release it then. But yeah, now there's a women's version of the Kango on its way, and yeah, it looks like a Santi undersuit. Very smart and hopefully nice and warm for the winter time. In other news, the body of a diver missing on the Zenobia shipwreck in Cyprus has been found and recovered and later identified as 66-year-old Dennis Reed, formerly a police inspector from Belfast who moved to Cyprus in 2008 and actually ran a dive school called Scuba Den. A large-scale air and sea operation was immediately launched by Larnaca Joint Rescue Coordination Centre and Cyprus Marine Police, and according to reports, military divers were searching the shipwreck for the missing man, located on Friday the 27th of October. Some reports stated he was in an area of the ship that is not often visited. Others specified the engine room of the huge ship. Details about the incident are still scarce. Some reports said it was believed the victim was a 66-year-old British instructor, which later turned out to be true. Others said he was Irish as well. Some stated he was guiding a couple who ascended before him without any issues, whilst others reported that he had been diving with a buddy who raised the alarm after reaching the surface without him. So lots of mixed reports. Hopefully in the next week or so we'll get some confirmed information. The Zenobia is a very popular dive site in Cyprus, with thousands of divers exploring the massive 172-meter long Ro-Ro ferry, which has been on the bottom in depths ranging from 19 meters to 42 meters since 1980. It's a very popular shipwreck out there. And the wreck diving mecca of Scapa Flow has tragically claimed a second diver fatality this year. In the same month that the body of 70-year-old Paul Smith was recovered, a 58-year-old man has died following a dive this morning. Police Scotland's a 58-year-old man has died following a dive late last week. Police Scotland said that the alarm was raised around 10:30 a.m. after two men were brought to Houghton Pier by boat. One was pronounced dead at the scene. The second was rushed to hospital for treatment. A spokesperson for the force said the death is being treated as unexplained and inquiries are ongoing. The tragic news comes just days after Paul Smith was named as the diver who was reported missing on the 28th of September after a dive on the SMS Markgraf, and whose body was recovered last week. Onto a handful of Ask Mark questions. David Arnold asked, considering a new dive computer, air integration is a must. Currently considering the Apex DSX versus the Perdix 2. What are your thoughts? I mean, between those two, they're both top tier dive computers. The main difference for me between the two is the battery. Perdix 2 has a user-changeable AA battery, and the DSX has a built-in rechargeable battery. Rechargeable batteries do lose their capacity over time, so that's like a long-term consideration. For that particular reason, I choose the Perdix for a long-term dive computer. Otherwise, DSX has a lot of bells and whistles, including it's not a built-in O2 analyzer, but you can plug in an O2 analyzer that comes with it. It doesn't come with the actual oxygen cell, but you get the hardware, as it were, that you can plug into the computer, and then you just analyze it and it inputs it straight in, which is pretty fancy. Otherwise, yeah, they're very similar computers. I think the DSX does have a lot of very advanced technical features that, unless you're diving particularly deep, most divers won't use them. Whereas the Perdix is a very, very strong all rounder. I've got the Perdix 1, and it'll work with a Apex Aqualung transmitter. You don't have to get a shearwater transmitter, although I think the shearwater transmitter is technically better, but the Apex Aqualung ones are a lot cheaper, and do what you need. They will talk to the computer, because it just requires the pelagic hardware, which Apex Aqualung now own. Personally, I'd go for the Perdix. I trust Shearwater. I also trust Apex as well. And but yeah, a lot of the features, unless you're seriously techie, you're probably not going to use them. Even on the Perdix has quite a lot of stuff that I don't really use. But it's got a good range, and there's I think it's still in the Perdix 2. They do like a recreational mode, which just strips out a lot of the Delta stuff and things. So you just have a cleaner screen. But if you want to, you can just turn it into like open circuit tech mode, and it still has all that information. But they're both good computers. So yeah, no real complaints there. White Fury asks, love the videos, perfect for new divers like me. I know the best practice is to typically have your regulators serviced once a year. I live in a landlocked state in the US, and it could be feasible to go an entire year without using them. Would you still have them serviced? I don't actually own any, but just thinking down the road. Yes. Regulators don't do very well in storage, because they need that kind of movement every now and then. It's a balancing act between using them too much and you're wearing out the softer materials like the O-rings and things, or not using them at all and things start to harden. So if they're not being used for I think it's 3 to 6 months, it's best to get them serviced, just so that you can freshen up the lubrication, you can freshen up all of the seals and what, so that they function properly. Otherwise, your regulators are just gonna just bubble usually, because they're more often than not, they're going to be downstream, so they're just going to allow a little bit of gas through. So yeah, it depends on the regulators. You can get some nowadays that have 2 or 3 year service intervals, which are a bit better, obviously, in the long run. So that might be worth a consideration when you're buying regulators. They can be a little bit more expensive in the capital upfront cost. But going forwards, if you don't need to service them quite as frequently, then the overall cost of the regulators does start to drop. Also look for regulators with a storage mode. A few Scuba Pro second stages have a storage mode built into the purge button to help reduce the force applied onto the sealing surface inside of the second stage. A lot of the atomic aquatic ones have an automatic one as well. So things like that can help you out for longer storage periods. Indie Craze asks, Mark, I'm a new diver and I've been told not to hold your breath. Would it be okay to hold it at the bottom of your breath, emptied near empty lungs, or is there some kind of injury I'm not aware of? Yeah, so the whole don't hold your breath, the proper statement should be not hold your breath and ascend. Holding your breath with empty lungs, I don't think there's an injury that you can get from that. However, it is best to just continue to breathe normally. Now, you can pause for a moment from time to time, but to really facilitate the best on-gassing and off-gassing as possible, it's best for you to breathe as normally and get a good deep lungful so that you're flushing out all of the excess gases that have been building up in your tissues and expelling them, replacing them with a nice big fresh breath of fresh air. And that way you're decompressing, you're off-gassing on the way up as efficiently as possible. So as much as it's not, you're not going to you shouldn't really collapse a lung as long as you're not changing depth with an empty lungful. I don't think you're going to hurt yourself by doing that, but it is always best to just breathe normally, just in and out, nice and slow. I was always taught a 3 count. Breathe in for 3 seconds and breathe out for 3 seconds. And yeah, it just takes it just nice and slow. Another way to help is with humming. Humming can make that breath last a long time when you're exhaling, and it really sort of makes you pay attention to it. So instead of just breathing out for 3 seconds, if you're humming a tune, you'll be surprised how long you can actually hum a tune for on a single breath. So yeah, if you're trying to increase your breathing rate, well, not increase, but decrease your breathing rate, or increase how long your gas lasts, humming is quite a good thing to do whilst scuba diving, because you're still exhaling, but not as quickly, and then you need a new breath of air to replenish your lungs. But yeah, as much as I wouldn't hold your breath on an empty lungful, as long as you're not changing depth, you shouldn't hurt yourself with it, but it's better just to breathe normally. Matthew Wignite, familiar question. What happened to Simply Scuba? Struth. So after I left so it's a long story basically, and it can be a little bit complicated. So Simply Scuba was started here in the UK in 1995, down here in Kent, and it grew and grew, and then it's complicated. It was kind of under the Simply Group umbrella. Even though the parent company was Simply Scuba, it was like the Simply Group, because we had Simply Swim, Simply Hike, and all sorts of different things. Then during the pandemic, it went into administration, and then it was later bought by another company called the Internet Fusion Group, and became one of their brands, one of their websites, and then Struth 2 years ago now, maybe, I left, and not long after that, Internet Fusion Group went into administration, and then I think all of their brands, including Simply Scuba, were bought by Brand Alley, who I don't think they've done a lot with the Simply Group, the Simply Scuba brand. It's not really. It was just something that they bought along with everything else. I don't think they were overly interested in that. They were more on like the fashion side of things. So I don't think we're going to see a lot from Simply Scuba going forwards, which is a shame, because myself and Sean and a lot of other people put a lot of effort into not only the YouTube side of things, but the brand itself. Yeah, it is kind of sad to see it disappear, but I don't think we're going to see a lot from them in the future. Taylor Bickle says, any thoughts on mounting your octo on the left and not the right? Did some dives in French Polynesia, and 2 different dive operators had their regulators set up this way. There's a Dan article about it too. I'll post it if I think I can. And it makes sense to me. On a semi-related note, I've heard a couple of dive pros talk about panicky divers just taking their buddy's primary instead of going for their octo. Any experience with that? Yeah, that's pretty common. That's why I tend to dive a primary donate setup anyway, because you know it's safe to breathe at the current depth, and yeah, divers tend to go with the one that they see. If you think back to your like foundational training, you should have seen a diagram where to place your alternate second stage, and there'll be a triangle from the bottom of your chin going down to both of the the bottom corners of your rib cage, anywhere in that triangle. And yeah, a lot of traditional like standard single cylinder setups have that alternate on your right hand hip. It does make a little bit of sense to have it on the left. The main reason most keep it on the right is to like separate both halves of your regulator. So everything on the right is right for regulators, so all of your breathing stuff is on the right hand side. So if you do the like tilt and sweep, you're going to find the those regulators, both of them. Whereas if you have it on the left, then you have your BCD and your dry suit and your SPG and your alternate. You got a lot going on your left hand side, and the only thing going on the right hand side is your primary. Arguably, you could put your your dry suit hose underneath your right hand side, but it just makes a bit more sense just to have it nice and neat. Everything on the left controls your buoyancy. Everything on the right is your regulators that you breathe from. The main benefit for having on the left is that in a lot of cases with the second stages, if you think about how a second stage is typically assembled, the hose that feeds it comes in from, as you're holding and breathing from it, comes in from the right hand side. So if you're facing your buddy and you donate your alternate, it means that your hose has to do this weird kind of S shape over your donating right hand shoulder. It S's across you to get to your buddy's right hand side, and it just reduces the amount of slack that you have. Whereas if it comes over your left hand shoulder, it makes this nice arcing loop. So it kind of makes a bit more sense. It's one of the reasons why some of the Apex regulators and some others, I know some Scuba Pro do it as well, they're ambidextrous. So yourself, as long as you know what you're doing, or a qualified technician, who's always better, can just change the gubbins on the inside of the second stage to flip it over. So now the hose routes in from the left hand side of the second stage, and it reduces that S shape to it. So yeah, there are some arguments for it. It's as long as it works for you and your buddy, as always, then it's perfectly fine. As far as donating gas, yeah, it did happen to me, and that's when I did transition to a long hose